Welcome to Charts Today. My name's David Linton, and this morning's edition for Wednesday, the 2nd of November, comes to you from London. And we start with the dollar, and dollar has fallen quite a bit over the last couple of days. Election jitters having a bit of an impact, so we're pulling back in the short term. Target is 97.31 on the dollar index. Remember, these are the long term, the medium term, and the short term picture, so it just allows us to see that bullish long term, bullish medium term above the cloud, but this lagging line below the cloud, this blue line below the cloud, tells us we're bearish in the short term. If we look at euro dollar, the reverse picture of true, of course, bearish in the long term, bearish in the medium term, but in the short term we're seeing a rise here. So although we've got a lot of medium term downside targets, we do have this new upside target back to 112. We have resistance here as well, so it will be interesting, and that same resistance on the cloud. If we look at Japanese yen as a proxy for the dollar, remember the dollar buys more yen, so this means dollar strengthening in the medium term. So real yen strength in the long term, and that short-term yen strength kicking back in again. Look at sterling. Sterling really nudging this 122.50 level this morning. For the last day or so, we've just been in this 152 range, trying to break out after this big fall, sideways move. But of course, the pressure is down. We still can't quite activate this upside target. We need a move really above 122.75 for that to happen. So at the moment, we're just on a knife edge, waiting to see what happens. Keep an eye on the 1 minute chart if you want to see the next move in sterling. If we look at the euro, we're seeing here sterling weakness continues against the euro, against the Swiss franc. We're also seeing that sterling weakness continues here as well. These downside targets 119 are reached. Last night, quite a hairy night on the stock market. We in the S&P 500, we did actually just momentarily go below the 2100 level. We recovered to 2111. 2120 was the sort of recent support mark, so we are just really coming through this level again. Election jitters. We mentioned yesterday that there were lots of downside targets to play for on the S&P 500 in the short term, and that's really where we've headed. That first one being met. We still have targets down to as low as 2017, 2060, 2087. So it does look like this 2100 level is going to come under pressure. There's a lot of downside targets to suggest that. Take a look at the Nasdaq. No clear downside targets here. The one that was given has been met and exceeded, but we are in a bearish frame here as well. So that's quite key. The Russell 2000, probably the most worrying of the indices, purely because we've just not made this higher high in the long-term chart. So just again, we've got a downside potential here of about 5%. And the futures this morning trading in London, we're seeing here that we have activated this downside target here as well. So market's just looking pretty bearish all around. FTSE yesterday, again, just heading back well below the 7,000 level to this the low 6,900s, bearish below the cloud. Again, 3 downside targets in the short term, so it just implies further downside for FTSE. And if we look at the 250, again, downside targets all activated. About 1.5–2% downside potential there as well. And the DAX, if we look at that, only one downside target of about 1.5% downside, but clearly through the cloud here, so that's quite bearish too. Asian markets have been quite strong of late, but they reacted negatively last night. The Nikkei off 1.75%. So we are seeing a pullback now, but still in bullish territory here on the short term, and no clear downside targets. And if we look at Shanghai down a little bit, and also Hang Seng down as about a similar amount as Tokyo, 1.5%. So we are just seeing markets globally having a sell-off this week. The same with the Sensex, and we look at the Australian market down over 1%. Has been a pretty poor performer of late. Backs are on the medium term, so the Australian market is actually bearish on all 3 time frames at the moment. Taking a look at Brent, falling away well below this $50 mark now. Seasonality weakness kicking in. Downside targets here of into the 44, 45 level. That's about 7% downside. So crude really sort of just hitting the buffers here on the cloud resistance. 46.30 is probably the support level for the lagging line, and that's looking like it's going to come under pressure. So crude just looking bearish again. WTI again, much the same picture. No clear downside targets here, but bearish below the cloud all the same. Heating oil was looking a little bit better yesterday, but it's back on the floor following crude prices this morning as well. If we look at nat gas, nat gas has come back into this bearish formation on the cloud. 267 is the downside target, just struggling to hold this medium-term target, and this long-term resistance just playing its way here. So looking a fairly bearish situation there as well. If we look at coffee, big performer of late, selling off, 2.5% downside, so a lot happening there. With all this turmoil, of course, we see gold going a little bit the other way. Had a strong day yesterday. We've been pointing to these upside targets. They're all kicking in. So gold showing some strength. And if we look at silver, silver even showing more strength. No clear upside targets in the short term though, but the long-term chart's still looking pretty good. Copper has been pretty bullish on the short-term time frame, but pulling back a little bit. Looking at the 10-year government bond in the US, just kicking into negative territory here. Downside target on the yield of 1.72. So we've got a little bit of respite here. Falling dollar, election jitters. We're just seeing rates coming off a little bit. Stocks were battered a bit yesterday. Apple we saw coming well back below the cloud and falling away. Google again falling away here, 3% downside there potentially. Amazon hasn't had a very good week with their results disappointing, or the outlook disappointing. And then Facebook due to report tonight, earnings after the close, just again on these jitters. So markets generally just in a little bit of turmoil as we head into election week. That's it for today. Until tomorrow, happy charting. See you then.